Hello and welcome to the Kill Stream. I'm your host, Ethan Ralph, the owner and the editor-in-chief of theralphreport.com. I'm joined by my co-host, one of my co-hosts, Zidane, and I'm also joined by Richard Spencer. How you doing this evening, Richard?
I'm doing quite well. My spirits are up, but under a lot of attacks right now by Silicon Valley and our friends in the social justice movement and stuff like that. But spirits are up.
Yeah, our good friends in the social justice movement.
Yeah.
They're good friends of the Ralph Retort too, as well. Yes.
Yeah.
So
well, I am. As we know, horseshoe theory is correct, and therefore, there's really no difference between me and a social justice warrior.
Yeah, according to the liberalist theory.
Yeah, Paul Joseph Watson and other philosophers.
You're like the same thing.
Good old horseshoe theory.
Literally the same thing.
It never goes out of stall. Okay, we'll get into some other stuff. I saw you did the debate with Nick Fuentes the other night. I didn't see the whole thing, but I watched a good portion of it. So we'll talk about that later. But let's jump into the newsworthy bits first. I guess before we get to GoDaddy, you were banned. I guess it was altright.com was banned from Facebook a couple weeks ago. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, actually, it was, I can't even remember, maybe 2 weeks ago now. And basically, I was fully banned from Facebook. And so everything that I had ever, any group that I had ever started or a page that I'd ever started was wiped, basically. And also Instagram, for that matter. At this point in my life, I barely used Facebook. And it wasn't really a major medium for things that I do. It's funny, I can remember Facebook because I'm a lot older than you guys. When I was a graduate student at Duke, and I was there early on, I think maybe even 2005 even, or 2006. And so I can remember the early days, and it, there was things like Friendster and all these other, ancient web civilizations, but Facebook was cool. I remember being kind of into it a bit at that point, but I had not used it for years. But at the same time, getting banned was getting banned. A lot of photos were just, evaporated, basically. The people do use Facebook, and my ability to interact with them that way was taken off. I don't know if this sparked it. It happened immediately after Mark Zuckerberg's appearance before Congress. And I actually did a video with Greg Conti where we gave takes on all of these questions. But, we actually, I'm not pro Mark Zuckerberg. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like I, slandered him or something. We were actually fair. We were, bashing Congress as much as we criticized Zuckerberg. But it was almost the next day I was completely wiped. I think, it's a correlation, doesn't imply causation, but I do think that they were probably related, that it was either that title of the video kind of set someone off. I can't even remember what it was, but it was something,
it was like the day after he was in Congress, right? Or right around
yeah,
that
exactly.
time, right? Yeah. So do you think?
And it was kind of like.
No, go ahead.
Well, Zuckerberg himself did it. I don't know about that. This gets at a bigger issue, which is what we're facing in terms of deplatforming, the great shutting. It's not systematic. It is ad hoc. It's sporadic. It often doesn't make sense. Why was Jared Taylor banned from Twitter last New Year's? Of all the people to ban from Twitter, he used Twitter almost like I use Facebook, which is not a lot. And he was, always polite, yet he was the one who's banned. My sense of all this stuff, and also you can take it in other ways. Even though I use Twitter quite a bit, and I use it as kind of like a news source for me to check in, what's going on in the world. I would give up my Twitter account in a second if I could have a consistent payment processor. And, I have been banned from PayPal and Stripe. That has made my life just, it has really affected me. I'm not going to lie. In terms of my ability to fundraise, just the other day, I was fundraising for my legal defense fund, and I went on Funded Justice, which funds Antifa. It funds people who have most likely committed the crime they're accused of, it is for getting legal representation or getting your life back together or whatever. And I raised about a little over $10,000 over the weekend. I mean, it was really great what happened. And then WePay, which is a subsidiary of Chase Manhattan Bank, deplatformed me. They forcibly refunded everyone. They took the money out of the bank account that it was going through, a direct refund. I'm sure that's in terms of service, but I mean, it was just a total nightmare. And so again, I would give up my Twitter account if I could have a consistent payment processor. So anyway, the whole what's going on is sporadic. It is not, it is not systematic, but it is happening. And I think they're basically dipping their toes in. So it's like, okay, let's ban Jared Taylor and see what happens on Twitter. And then also the payment processors, we can allow other people in the alt-right to use Stripe, to use other things. But let's not allow Richard Spencer. That's the point. And it was Andrew Anglin a little bit. It was people who are maybe less controversial than I am at other points. Again, it's not systematic. And I think basically they're just trying these things out. It might even be a simple case of someone in the customer service just wakes up and is in a bad mood or something. Forgot to take his or her meds or their blue hair dye into their brain or something, or whatever. They just got back from a slut walk and they haven't had enough sleep.
Now, let me ask you this: do you think maybe they're doing it because you're a very well known figure? We'll ask you about this later too, but you have fans too, but you're hated in a lot of quarters too. Like people, you know what I mean. You're known. I know.
Yeah.
See Christine Fair. Like even when you go out in public, people recognize you sometimes, right? I mean, it's like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like I've had that happen maybe once or twice. I assume that you've had that happen a lot more, where people actually
it happens regularly. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a different kind of hate when somebody recognizes you. It's one thing to get mean comments on YouTube and Twitter, which I get, but it's another when you go down to the coffee shop or to get you some food and somebody's fucking with you, right? Like it's a different.
Yeah, but you also find some weird fans in weird places. I won't mention where they are, but I'll be in like at the equivalent of the DMV. It wasn't literally at the DMV, but and you have a guy who like he kind of looks at me funny, and then like as I'm leaving, he was like, "Could I shake your hand? I really loved what you did to Sargon."
Maybe he just was like Sargon.
Yeah.
You kind of threw Sargon for a loop. Yeah, I'll say that.
That was pretty good.
Yeah. But so you do find those things. You find other people who recognize me but then just are adults about it and do things. You'll occasionally get hostility. Again, things are things can ramp up, and obviously in an intense point, I can be physically assaulted right. In Washington, D.C., as I was, that's like the most intense form of mean comments, is to, throw a forearm at me while I'm looking the other way. I mean, it's most cowardly.
From Georgetown, Christine Fair, who's a complete nutcase, by the way. But I remember, I think
she's awful.
Yeah, I think this was last year. She saw you at a gym, right? Or something like that, and
yes.
Started a huge kerfluffle.
Yeah, and the thing is, the gym had actually known who I was, and they were actually just kind of dealing with it. They said, "Well, you've been coming here. You don't talk to anyone. I mean, like I don't have any friends at that gym. It's I just go and do my workout." And they're like, "You've been coming here. You don't talk to anyone. You don't do anything. Like we don't feel like we should kick you out." Or we didn't feel like that. But then this bitch, made this huge scene, and she was also recording, like she was taking photos, which is actually a total violation of rules in that gym, because it was a fairly nice place. They don't want people taking photos,
filming people while they're working out. So, I mean,
right, filming someone's working or taking a booty shot or something. It's just against the rules. So simply against the rules. So I did nothing. I did nothing wrong, and I actually de-escalated because I mean, what am I going? I'm going to get in a fight with some 65-year-old, or like
well,
cat
that's what
lady.
she would want anyway, like for you to get like.
That's what
super
she
angry.
wanted. Is that I was just like, look, just just please go away. Like this is insane. But then of course she got kicked out of the gym too, but she kind of won. She got and I was just kind of like, all right, this is awful. It set a bad precedent. There are a lot of reasons to be extremely critical of Milo, but the fact is, when he was at a bar, a couple of weeks ago, they were not screaming pedophile apologist at him. They were screaming, Nazi. And he was basically, he was at a bar. I don't even think that was an event or anything. I think he was just at a bar.
Yeah, he was there for lunch.
And
Yeah, I think he was just.
he was there for lunch, and he was, yeah. So that's bad. I mean, that again, I'll defend Milo when he deserves defense, and he did in that case. He didn't do anything wrong. He's done other things that are worthy of severe criticism, but not then. And that's again, are we getting closer to a day when me or anyone else goes someplace and gets shouted down? I mean, Jason Kessler, again, he's been hounded out of places in Charlottesville. And also in terms of the deplatforming, is there going to be a point where it is just systematic, and we are all going to be deplatformed, and it's going to they'll start with someone like me who's well known and controversial, or someone like Andrew Anglin who's he's totally outlandish and all this stuff that he's done. They'll do that kind of thing, but then they're going to go after you. I mean,
I was going to say they'll just keep moving down the line. That's the thing. Clearly, there are people who want to take me off the internet. I've had my domain attacked in the same ways and had to move, hosts and stuff like that. My first web host, they basically, I think it was Brianna Wu, that psychopath, spammed them with a bunch of shit, and then. I had to find a new host. Now, luckily, it didn't go to the domain level because that's a different thing. But yeah, that's clearly. I mean, the thing is, even if people disagree with you, which I'm sure there's some people here listening who might not like you or disagree with you, it's about free speech in general. It's not about they have to love everything you're saying.
Right, and even as of 2014, Twitter was claiming that we are the free speech party within the free speech party. Like they were making really bold claims. Yeah. And I think there's something connected to their own ideology. Like I don't think the Silicon Valley mentality and the kind of optimism of the web itself is it's the talking cure, basically. Like we just need to talk to each other, and then we'll all work it out, and we'll all reach these conclusions, which are individualist globalism or whatever they want. And but I think we've seen a kind of hardening of their attitudes, and a lot of the Russia narrative has played a huge part in all that. And this is where we're moving. I mean, I use this metaphor a lot. It's like, where is the arrow pointing? Not where are we right now, but where is all of this leading? And it's clearly all leading towards deplatforming. And the problem is we are behind. Like we were able to use all of this stuff. I have, over the course of my career, I mean, I've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars via Stripe and PayPal and using the internet, using Twitter, whatever. And so all of that stuff, Silicon Valley was a huge benefit to us. But now, we couldn't be doing what we're doing now. I mean, people who were in a dissident movement 20 years ago were, or maybe 30 years ago, you could say, we're doing like mimeographed newsletters and just publishing books, things that were read by hundreds of people.
Yeah, like Ron Paul used to do a newsletter and stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly. The Ron Paul newsletters, which were, the Daily Stormer of the time. I say that jokingly. They weren't that crazy, but they were pretty ballsy. They were kind of like alt-right
trouble for those later on. I mean, in terms of media attention. Oh, you said this about MLK.
They were pretty they're pretty alt-right. They were
they
talking about race, talking about the Jews and so on. But obviously going leading everyone towards libertarianism and the gold standard and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, this is where the arrow is pointing. It's pointing towards a systematic deplatforming of everyone, and that really does include everyone. And like, you can't just be nice and they're going to leave you alone. So I think they're testing the waters, and it might actually happen sooner than later. I mean, this might actually be a 2018 midterm election thing, and it's definitely going to be a 2019 election, because remember, that's when this thing starts. But next year, this time, the presidential election is in full swing.
Yeah.
We don't even quite know what they're going to pull out, and there's going to be Republican primaries. Trump is going to be campaigning. There are going to be more scandals. They've got more stuff up their sleeve. I don't know what the Democrats are going to do. I mean, I don't see it now. I mean, they're going to have to come up with something. They're going to have to come up with something outside the box. Oprah, who knows? But they're going to have to do something. And it's going to be in full swing. And the Russia narrative is waned a bit, but it hasn't gone away. It is still. Yeah. You can just say, is it true you were speaking to the Russians?
There's a large space, and I'll let Zidane talk after this, but there's a large space, of course there's going to be a Democratic primary, and it's looking like it's going to be a complete free-for-all probably. And there is a space for somebody to go, and you just look at Twitter, some people who've accumulated followers and followings based on how far they're willing to push the Russia thing and go with it and talk treason and talk this and that. There's going to be a space in the Democratic primary for whoever just goes the furthest with that and pushes it the furthest.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I was running for that slot, I mean, and I didn't have a lot of other options, you know what I mean, or national name ID, that's exactly what I would do. I mean, because there's a lot of people hungry on the left to hear somebody say those things. To
kind of dare the other people to demand impeachment.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Zidane.
So it's going to be wild, and we've taken our first stumbling steps towards alt tech, but we're just nowhere near where we need to be. And this is something. I mean, I will tell people, like, I am talking with people behind the scenes about this, but not enough has been done from what I can tell. Patreon was a really interesting development, but that was attacked, and it wasn't even. I mean, how much money was really raised through Patreon? I mean, it's not like one of us got $1 million and now we have we're on a totally new level. No, it was just basic fundraising.
I would have,
and so I don't know. It just needs to happen, and it's like, for someone to do it, they're going to come under a huge amount of intense fire. I mean, even maker support. I mean, this was a young kid who Connor. I'm forgetting his last name, but I mean, he seemed very genuine. I do not. There were some people who I saw were kind of bashing him or something. I don't think it was a scam at all. I think he was a genuine kid, but he was just coming under a tremendous amount of fire. Free Starter and Chuck Johnson are coming under fire. I mean, they want us to be totally without funding completely, and they're just going to go.
I have an account on there, and I'm getting like.
I don't encourage. I think people should not donate now.
Seems,
but I do think. I do think he genuinely wants to have something that works, but please don't, like, I've spoken with him. I'm going kind of on my gut. I think he's a good kid. That's my impression.
Maybe he got in
and
he
he probably did get in too deep or over. He was over his head. But again, it's really hard. I mean, there is like a market for this. To say. This is the real free speech platform. I'm going to do it, but it's just very hard. I mean, we aren't there yet, and I don't know. I've thought about this. I mean, instead of doing all these public events and something, maybe we should just focus on making this movement possible, because things are going to get intense. I think Bannon made some. I mean, again, I've been very critical of Bannon, but from an ideological perspective, like all this like multi-culty economic nationalism, we're going to all become the transgender lesbian and the blacks and immigrants. We're going to all work in a coal mine and love America together and and everyone live in the suburbs and be middle class. I mean, I thought that was total conservative nonsense. But that being said, that's an ideal criticism, about ideas. But in terms of a lot of the things he said, he at least was saying things like we should treat these Twitter and things like that as utilities. Like he was at least broaching the topic, which I will give him full kudos for.
I have some criticisms with Gab and stuff, but Torba's talked about this a lot too. Andrew Torba, the guy who created Gab.
He's another one.
How we kind of need it's like, a second, like a parallel internet, you know what I mean? Parallel internet structure for conservative voices, dissident voices, and without it, that they're gonna kind of wither on the vine. I mean, and
it's sad because what in terms of the Gab thing, I don't use Gab a lot. I certainly have an account, but because I want to be public, like I actually want to see what mainstream people are thinking and what liberals are thinking. Like I want to know what they're thinking, and I also want to make announcements that are public. The Gab is a kind. I mean, from at least when I'm on there, it does feel like it's really inside baseball. It's an echo chamber, which is not the fault, which is no one's fault. It just is what it is. So again, if we're kicked off these mainstream platforms and we're in this kind of like underground space, it's sad in a way. I mean, this is not what we want.
All right, let me let Zidane get in here. I know he wants to ask him.
I was just going to comment on that. Is if you guys all go into your own little space, then does it really matter? You might as well not be on anything, right? If you're just talking to yourselves, what does it matter at that point? If you're not confronting people who are against you or who have different opposing views or that can see you, you need to have majority of people, not just one side or the other. If Twitter was just liberal, then it'd be worthless. If it was just conservative, it'd be worthless, in my opinion. You have to have everyone on it. That's my one criticism of just alt tech as I like to. I guess
won't
people call
say
it.
It's completely worthless because there's still worth in being able to connect with people.
Right,
of
but
like
it's
not. But it's not the same potency unless there's different views. I mean, there's nobody to first off make fun of to like go against.
Exactly.
And it's just not there.
Well, and even in those like crazy moments, like I remember. If you allow me some nostalgia here.
Please.
I remember about a little over a year ago, it was like a year and a couple months when the last Super Bowl happened, and the Patriots were down.
I remember
and
this, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I tweeted out, I tweeted out like I'm rooting for the Patriots. A, I'm from that. I was born in Boston, so therefore I'm like allowed to. But then B, they've got all three white wide receivers and a white team, and Tom Brady is an Aryan avatar, and I was getting kind of outlandish. Oh, and he's pro-Trump, so I was being outlandish, and I didn't think like a lot of it. I was just kind of expressing my thoughts, but that started to go viral, and then when the Patriots had this miraculous comeback, I was feeling the enthusiasm, and it went in this weird place where, I mean, I would look at my feed, almost like every like ESPN like commentator had been like, "This is terrible," and then like Joss Whedon of the Avengers fame, was like he was like liking anti-Spencer tweets, like because I would see it all on my feed. So we were, George Takei had to comment. We were
People
reaching
were
the
going
mainstream.
absolutely crazy over your tweets.
That's pretty funny.
And then,
I did
the Patriots were
this-
about to get blown out, so everybody's just like, "Oh, look at!" Of course, they're calling you Nazi, and oh, look at these Nazis getting defeated. And then all of a sudden, they started coming back, and then they won. Of course, it was fucking hilarious.
It was, and so I was doing these really, trollish and funny, tweets, and it was just, it was under everyone's skin, and so it was like a public event. I mean, I don't think I'm tooting my own horn too much. It wasn't even, it just happened. It wasn't even like, it was certainly not planned. It was totally organic. I don't think anything like that is going to happen again. I cannot prove this. I without question feel shadow banned. My following count has basically plateaued and has slightly dipped. It hit 80,000 and just kind of has set around there. Whereas throughout my whole career, I was gaining, a couple hundred a day like clockwork. And maybe I hit my limit of Twitter popularity. Sure, maybe that's the case. I'm not so sure about that. I think they're fiddling behind the scenes.
It seems unlikely
on a lot of people, not just me.
Let me ask you. We got a super chat. We got a few super chats, but I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna read them all, but I want to ask the couple that are like super relevant, and we're gonna take calls in a minute too. Join the green room. Zidane will post the link in the chat if you want to join the green room and talk. Please be respectful, because if not, we'll kick you. Not be critical if you want, but don't get on here with some goofy shit. Ian Murphy says, Spencer, why did you stay on GoDaddy after the Daily Stormer incident?
That's a legitimate criticism. The rest of my sites are not on GoDaddy, and we are in the process of finding a ultimate home. But it's a kind of, I guess you could say, historical reason. It was somewhat arbitrary. It has to do with a lot of little technical things, but actually, to be frank, I should be criticized for not moving it off earlier. But we are moving it off now, and GoDaddy has not seized the URL or anything like that. Yeah. So we are moving.
Disowned you from their service. They didn't try to take
exactly
you. Right. Now let me ask you about this. I'd read altright.com. I mean, not like every single day, but I'd read several posts on there and kind of kept up with it a little bit. I'm not aware of any violent content or calls for violence or anything like that on that site. I mean, could you respond? I mean, that's pretty much. They don't claim, like that woman, Clark, I'm forgetting her first name. I have her stuff pulled up too.
Kirsten Clark, and she's part of the civil rights organization. Yeah. They don't cite any, like, where is it? I mean, and keep in mind, when you talk about death threats, saying something, again, I don't even say this, but saying something like, I'm going to destroy that guy, or go kill yourself or whatever. That's tough talk. That is not a death threat. I mean, a death threat is an immediate, direct call for violence, or something as heinous as, like, all Mexicans should die or whatever.
But even that, to me, it has to be actionable calls for violence. Now, saying all Mexicans should die, to me, is not something that should get you kicked off.
Well, I agree. It probably shouldn't. But I've never said anything.
But you're saying that didn't exist. Yeah, I understand what you mean.
I mean, and so basically, we're seeing it, and it's very interesting because there's always been this asymmetry between the European experience and the American experience. So the American experience, we don't have actual hate speech laws. And that is it's a great benefit, obviously. It's kind of a disadvantage in a way. I sometimes wish some people would shut up. There's something, I'm just saying, I don't, if go with me on this. There's actually a certain advantage to having a hate speech code, because that makes you articulate things in different ways, and it kind of keeps down total lunatic type talk. But I ultimately do. I mean, keep in mind, I don't even talk about some of these things that are outright banned in Germany and elsewhere. I've never engaged in historical revisionism when it comes to the Holocaust and so on. But I think, if I were based in Germany, I think I might very well have been arrested by now.
There's a decent chance of that.
And in the UK seems worse. I mean, I'm banned for life from the United Kingdom due to speeches that I gave at a really hoity-toity group that was called the Traditional Britain Group, or it still is. These speeches, I mean, I was inspiring hatred among the communities was, I think, Theresa May's, and she was actually Interior Secretary, so I was banned by Theresa May herself.
She banned a lot of people.
Yeah, you read a speech that I gave at the Traditional Britain Group, and what someone died because of that speech. I mean, I wish that I were, like Paul Atreides, and I could just kill people with thoughts or whatever, but I can't, unfortunately. I'm not that grand. But it's worse in the UK. It's been terrible in Germany for a long time. And we don't have those hate speech laws here, but what we're finding in the 21st century, it's kind of worse because, again, if you're banned from Twitter and Stripe and you can't get your website up, I mean, you might as well not exist, and imagine this going forward. Remember when the Confederate flag was basically denounced by Nikki Haley, conservative, 2020 conservative contender, staunch right winger.
I used
Nikki
to live
Haley
in South Carolina, and she was the governor when I lived there.
Yeah, and she denounced the flag and she removed it from the Capitol. But she said, "Oh, you can have this in private. Go have your fun, rednecks. But we're so much more oppressive or progressive." Basically, Amazon immediately started banning the sale of the flag, and even books that were like objective historical, chronicles of like the Confederate battles or whatever, like history books were banned
on it.
Yeah, and so imagine getting banned from Amazon.
Like Civil War games banned from the App Store on Apple too as well.
Yeah.
So.
And shirts and this and hats and anything, belt buckles, whatever had the Confederate flag on it, they took away for whatever.
Yeah, imagine this. Sense. So imagine this going forward. Imagine we can't use Amazon. Imagine we're banned from a Google search. I mean, at some point, this becomes.
That happen already.
I mean, they banned from
massively
PayPal and Google Pay and stuff like that. So I mean,
they took the Stormer off of Google, didn't they?
Yeah, I don't.
They took them off the search results.
I don't think you can find.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're already doing that.
Yeah, right, and that is, that's a canary in the coal mine, and I'm a canary in the coal mine as well. But yeah, imagine because I know with like what is it, the Pirate Bay? If you can't directly search for that on a Google search.
Yep.
Because again, I guess Hollywood has twisted the what is it?
The MPAA and the recording.
They forced them to do it. Maybe the government has done it, but basically you can't you can't search for that. And but imagine if that starts happening to all of our sites. So, in altright.com maybe first, or the Stormer first, altright.com, then they go to Ameren. Then they go to VDare, then they go to Raufertor, then they just keep going, and it's just one after another, and it becomes over the course of the period, it becomes systematic.
Eliminate all,
of course.
dissident opinion. Now let me ask you this. Go ahead, Sedan, real quick.
I was saying, once they get rid of you guys, they're gonna come after everyone else.
Well, that's
your
why
first.
I feel like it's so important. Let me ask you this, and we're gonna take calls right after this, and we have a couple more things I want to ask. But I guess Charlottesville, looking back, a lot of this it's not like it didn't exist before. The deplatforming attempts and stuff like that, but it seems to have really kicked into high gear after Charlottesville. Looking back, would you have participated in that again? And if so, what would you have? I mean, I know you didn't organize it personally; you just appeared. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I guess just what are your thoughts? Do you think that was a mistake?
History moves forward and it doesn't move backwards. So, would I have gone to Charlottesville if I had a time machine or something? I don't even know. I mean, the thing is, there were some. There were some problems with Charlottesville going in. I mean, the Charlottesville 1, I actually was involved with organizing.
Yeah, I remember that.
And and that was more of the flash mob style. So it was not pre-announced. It was tightly organized, and that definitely made headlines around the world. I mean, people were really freaked out by the torches and just the show of force and so on. And so Charlottesville 2 was already problematic. And I have to be honest, going into it, I did not recognize how big it was getting. I agreed to it, and I had just done a free speech event on the mall, the Washington Mall, which there was no violence, and it was, it was fine. But it was a very good event. But with Charlottesville, it just it became the epicenter, and it was part of a long line of things that were happening. I mean, all those battles of Berkeley, the violence, the Antifa. I mean, it was gearing up.
Somebody was going to get killed eventually. Like, that's just
yeah.
Well,
yeah. I mean, I hate to. Maybe I shouldn't even talk about this due to the lawsuit. But things were. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, though, going into it, I didn't expect anyone. I mean, I knew that the Antifa were gonna come out, but I never. I thought that it was gonna go off and so on. Now, I can be criticized retroactively of saying you should have been warning that this is a democratically controlled city. They're gonna engage in dirty tricks and so on. But at that point, the train was just on the tracks. Just the idea of I felt like we had to go through with it, even if we were, there was a possibility because of the permit situation that it was getting rejected, and the ACLU backed Kessler and then so on, that I thought we might be just escorted off, or that they might use the claim of, oh, this is too dangerous, we're going to end the event. I definitely thought that might happen, but the train was going, and obviously, like, in terms of people that I was directly influencing, like the people around me, I mean, we were talking a lot about, again, de-escalation, even to the point of not defending oneself, of if someone comes and sprays us with mace, we are going to walk on and not engage with them. And we actually did that. As I was walking into the park, I was sprayed with mace, and we did not engage that person. We just walked on. And then we actually, so we were talking about ways of de-escalation and so on. And no one around me was engaged in any kind of violence. And we were victims of being attacked. I'm of two minds. I mean, the thing is, that show of force, that all of those people coming out there and basically saying, we are a people. I mean, that's what we were saying. This can go into the real world. That shook the world, and it no question did. It was, remember, Charlottesville, particularly Friday night, that was a time of high optimism of the movement. Afterward, there were these massive problems that I agree we could have predicted. The guy with the swastika flag, that he unfolded and was using, that it's bad. And also just the ability, even if that guy weren't there, just the ability of the mass media to spin it. I mean, Fox News was playing images of a Ku Klux Klan rally that had occurred like a month beforehand. It was totally mendacious. Yeah. So, and look, and right immediately afterward, the deplatforming escalated, and I'm now facing lawfare. So, I mean, look.
I'll say this, like, I've been slightly critical of it, after it happened, but it is easy to sit back and say, well, we see all these effects that happened after. And we could say, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't have done that. I'll give you that.
In the moment,
it's a little different when, this looks like a good opportunity to defend. I mean, it was about the statues too, right? I mean, that was the
exactly, and that was the perfect way of reaching the American public, because remember, even Trump effectively refused to denounce this. I mean, he denounced neo-Nazi. He denounced the federal agents.
And he caught a ton of shit over that too.
He did.
Yeah, but he didn't ultimately denounce the idea of defending the statues. And he hasn't done great things for the statues. Yeah.
I mean, he said, on Twitter. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was what it was. I mean, you have to learn from it. I mean, like, if another occurs, I'm not going to return. I mean, but again, I've basically said everything I said at the press conference. I definitely knew that there was, I knew that there was going to be some clashes, and the thing is, those are the collateral damage of speaking one's mind. I mean, look, there are fistfights at football games. I mean, whenever there's a group of people, there's going to be some harsh words, exchange. Yeah, and so and we're doing something highly controversial. So this is, and the other thing, I mean, all of those people these claims of oh, I was triggered to the point of having a mental issues or something. I mean, stay at home, don't turn on the television. I mean, all of those people who were triggered could have easily just avoided it. But it became this thing, and we were absolutely betrayed by the civil authorities.
Yeah,
and
that's a big
I'm
part
not going to look at the cops. I'm not going to look at the police the same way.
Yeah, it was complete
after
fail
Charlottesville. To be
on
honest.
on the part of the cops. Let me bring some people in.
I just have two things real quick before we bring someone in.
Okay, go ahead.
One, the Daily Stormer isn't removed from Google Sites. It was my fault. They switched to Google's registrar, and then they got immediately kicked off. And I guess I mixed that up in my head. So that's one thing. And two, don't you think after Charlottesville there has been a real big push? That's when I think the big push to get you guys kicked off of Twitter, off of Facebook, off of all these your web registrars, all that stuff. That's when it started kicking off, because you guys were in the spotlight and on every news network. It seems like that was a catalyst.
There's zero doubt that was, but was it? I mean, can you blame the people who showed up? Obviously, I mean, he just showed up. It wasn't like Richard Spencer organized himself. Or is it about they were just looking for any opportunity?
A reason?
Yeah, exactly.
Something would have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there would have been. I mean, and again, I think to go back to earlier, I certainly never imagined that the police would allow chaos to occur in downtown Charlottesville, and that this incident with the car would. I mean, that was. Totally that was could not be predicted, and was obviously a horrible thing that occurred, but yeah, there was no question that things were getting more intense.
Somebody got shot in Washington. I mean, there was all these
those battles at Berkeley were getting pretty ugly, and those were those events. Keep in mind, like, Milo would go to provoke them, and there was in February at a Milo college tour there was
Washington State
or Washington State
shot. I mean, somebody could have got killed way before then. Of course, I don't want to see anybody dead over this stuff, but
it's because not just for moral reasons, but also for pragmatic reasons. It has obviously been horrible for the movement. But again, the idea that I guess what bothers me about retroactive Charlottesville criticism is it's this notion that we could have just twisted some knob the other way and we would all be fine and everyone would love us or something like that, or we just had to alter the rhetoric slightly. That's not to say that you can't learn lessons or that we shouldn't articulate things differently or what have you. I mean, that's fine to learn lessons, but we're a vanguard movement that's going up against the establishment.
Entrenched,
I mean, this is going to be hard.
Yeah, and I'll say, I've been, I don't know that I've been like super critical, but I have sit here and said, well, Charlottesville, it looks like it was a mistake. But when you sit and think about, talking to you, and I'm just sitting here thinking about on the fly, like, I don't know. I mean, they were probably going to, they were looking for anything that was going to happen. You know what I mean? They were looking for that excuse. And it's easy to say. I mean, looking back, would you do it? Would you do everything the same? Probably not. I mean, you pretty much said that yourself. But it's easy to. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, as they say. All right, let's bring some people in. We're gonna see. We'll see how this works. We've done this before, but not with those high-profile guests as you, Mr. Spencer. Let's try the old order. We're gonna drag him in. I see he's muted right now, so. He's probably not going to be able to speak. The old order, you're on the air, man. Okay.
Hello?
Yes, what's up?
Hello? Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Hello?
Okay, hold on. Let me try this.
Can you hear
me? Yes, we can
hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
I cannot hear you at all.
Okay. We get it. You can't hear us. You're going to have to go back and figure that out. Jesus Christ. Okay, let's try somebody else.
Live. This is what happens when you do it live.
What happens when you do it live. This is the internet Spurg version of Washington Journal, if you've ever watched that on C-SPAN, which I have many days. I'm sure you've seen that before too, Richard, right? Washington Journal on C-SPAN.
Oh, I have seen that a couple times, yeah.
Okay. All right, let's try somebody else. Cyrax, you're on the air live on the Kill Stream.
Hey, what's going on, Ralph?
Oh, nothing much, man. We're trying to do this live caller thing, so I hope you have something good.
I mean, to be honest, I came in with some questions, but Richard really answered a lot of them, I guess. You sort of mentioned that you call this a vanguard movement. Is that really the best way forward? I mean, do you think we have more or less influence now than before the election? I mean, it seems like just the whole taking it that direction from the start was sort of problematic. I guess I hate to use that term.
I don't think we have any choice whether we're a movement or not. I mean, I have always been part of a vanguard movement in the sense that I've always strived to be radical in the proper sense of the word. That is getting to the root of matters, to think years ahead, decades, centuries ahead, and not just react to politics in the way that conservatives do. So that is me, and that has always rubbed certain people the wrong way. But I would say this current move towards we're going to be Americanist. I mean, we're going to basically be implicit racist, quote unquote, as a movement that is already like controversial and disparaged by the establishment, but we're gonna pretend like we're conservatives. That just absolutely makes no sense. I don't think anyone is going to believe us that we're actually just patriotic. I think we're giving up a tremendous amount of intellectual ground by doing that. I mean, for a long time, I have actually been critical of the immigration reform movement, particularly the focus on illegal immigration. But even the focus on illegal immigration, I mean, I don't think this is going to happen. But if all legal immigration were ended tomorrow morning, the demographic and thus cultural and ultimately spiritual transformation of America is baked into the cake. I mean, the majority of births ever since 2011 are to non-whites. So we have to be out in front. I mean, just claiming that we're going to save the system or something. I mean, this was kind of an interesting move with Trump, where, I mean, what was interesting about Trump and why we were getting so many headlines and freaking the left out and so on with Trump was that the conservatives attacked Trump very early on. They made it clear, 2015, you are not our candidate, you are not conservative as they define it, and so on. You're not un-American, it went on and on. And we were acting as Trump's vanguard. So whereas Trump reached people where they are and spoke, oh, we're going to build the wall, we're all going to be rich together, we're going to make America great, all that kind of stuff. He reached normies where they are, or where they were.
Right.
But we became his vanguard, and the conservatives gave up that ground. Now, once 2017 rolled around, the conservatives regained a hold of Trump, and he basically, the first year, he effectively pursued their agenda and not what we want to see.
Right.
But
I guess I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to say the direction I hear often, and I actually don't necessarily feel this way, because Hailgate was a defining moment for me, because I very much was alt-right. That happened. I saw the reaction to that kind of bullshit, and I was like, you know what? It's time for me to take a stand, and I fell on your side of it. Now, that is really whenever the movement sort of, I don't want to say went downhill, but it sort of went on a side road. Like, we had power and influence before that movement or that moment, and whenever you did that, it sort of set the entirety of the movement towards this IRL activism campaign that eventually resulted in the Cuck Box incident. And I think that
I'm not sure it resulted in that.
Well, I'm sorry, it didn't result. It ended, I think, because the Cuck Box incident ended the IRL activism phase of our movement. I mean, wouldn't you agree? At least to the same extent, I guess I should say.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I agree. I think you're almost chronicling things, thinking that this led to that, or we could have been somewhere else. We were not as influential as we might have hoped when the alt-right was in a different stage. The alt-right was totally unknown, but it was gaining traction on 4chan and Twitter and so on. And someone like Milo was basically trying to channel the alt-right. And I think we played that fairly well in the sense that, you know, it was, we could use Milo. Milo was much, much more popular. We could be the, you know, he could kind of bring us to a new level. But at some point, the alt-right can't just be some like troll movement. It had to be real. And I sought to define it very early on. I mean, I defined it in September.
With coining the term, or at least popularizing it, right?
Right, but it could have been taken in a very different direction. I mean, there were a lot of people who wanted to take it in the Breitbart direction, in the direction of Milo, and what have you. And, you know, I did a press conference in September in which I basically said, this is what we're about. Race is real, race matters, race is the foundation of identity, you know, so on. It was defining it. I actually got a tremendous amount of heat from the alt-right and the Andrew Anglin types for, you know, I wasn't hardcore enough, and I didn't bash the Jews or whatever. And so that was where it was going. With Hailgate, that was a weird situation. You know, this was, I knew that those lines would have been provocative. I did not certainly expect
trolling, though,
the
right?
Zig Heil. I was trolling, I'm sure. I was evoking, I was being provocative, evoking certain things. I mean, at that, you know, there was a lot, people were euphoric. I mean, I started writing and thinking about the conference, writing the speech before Trump won, and I thought that he very well wouldn't win. But yeah, that there was a lot of, I mean, Mike Enoch was, you know, getting the crowd riled up, and there was a lot of ironic Roman saluting. And
I thought it was
so
mostly kind of a joke, right?
That's what I thought too. I was
and so when I ended my speech on a high note,
the mainstream media is not gonna. I mean, they see an opportunity. They're not gonna play this joke. Cyrex, thank you for joining us, man.
All right, thanks for having me.
But the movement would have the movement could have ended if I had basically said, "Oh well, I've apologized. This is terrible. Whatever." No, I handled it exactly the right way. I took the punches, and then I didn't throw anyone under the bus, even though I could have. Mm-hmm. And I also basically said the truth, which was that this was ironic. Like this was the memosphere bleeding into IRL, and it's deeply problematic. But we just got to roll with it and get better.
All right. Let me ask you this. No, go ahead.
Yeah.
Finish your thought. I hate to cut you off.
This is the thing. This is the thing, though. And this is actually what I find really genuinely frustrating. The same people who have basically attached themselves to the alt-right and pushed it into directions that are really not the best. I mean, the amount of like gas chamber memes and Nazi lulz going on TRS was over the top. And I mean, I like Mike Enoch. I think Mike Enoch has a lot to bring to the table and so on. But, you know, it didn't need to all be like that. And obviously, ditto and Anglin. Anglin's a very talented journalist. He you know, very interesting. But, you know, I never invited this whole thing like, oh, this is the alt-right here. And they were getting mad at me for defining the alt-right in a down-to-earth identitarian fashion. So these same people who bring all of this, you know, these symbols to the party are the ones that push it every 3 to 6 months. They push it in some direction, and they basically create they create these shibboleths. So, you know, it was first like you have to be full on Nazi or you're not really alt-right. Then it was, oh, we're going to embrace white Sharia. Then it was, oh, it's the thought wars. If you're not denouncing women, then it was creating all these shibboleths. Then it was, let's attack, you know, Heimbach. Let's attack other the League of the South type people. Oh, let's jump on them. You know, destroy them. Then it's now you have to be an American. At every stage, they jump on a new fad, And it's
Well,
ironic
you're-
that, again, like, do you think Weave has good optics? Like, do you think we like? Oh, let's listen to this man about optics. And every time they jump on a new fashion, and then they basically create a shibboleth where you're not in the movement unless you agree with this. I have not agreed with any of these. I don't sound
The
off
thing
on
is,
any of these.
you're self-narrowing your base when you have certain criteria.
We are, and it's just not necessary. Like, we have to define things, and not define things in terms.
Oh.
So again, white, you don't white Sharia. You have to denounce all thoughts. I didn't do any of this shit, and it's just like all of these things were these just moments in the movement that were done by people who. I don't know what to say. Like, they're not defining positively the movement. The same people, again, who want us to be pro-America, or in the case of some, we need to be wildly pro-Trump. Trump is doing all this great stuff for us, or whatever. I've never taken the bait on any of this stuff, and yet so many people have. And I really think it's a problematic thing. I mean, we need to not be so fickle and not just keep going down these, bad paths.
All right, let me read a couple of these super chats, and we'll try to bring somebody else on. I know you only got, I don't know, 15, 20 more minutes, whatever you got. I mean, whatever you got, whenever you got to go, that's fine. But let's read a couple of these. SoCal Chris said, worked hosting for 10 years, can tell you that GoDaddy hosts a lot of Paul sites, left mostly do a who is search, or Hoys, however you say that, on different sites, and ask them why those don't violate the toss. Yeah, that's a good question. Mel Gibson 138 says, Richard, be siege already. The time for manvests are over, and the time for mosh pits is here. Now,
Right,
are you in a As I Lie Dying or The Cure sieger? I don't even know.
William Faulkner, Robert Smith. That's
all right. I like
the
that.
dialectic.
There's a couple positive comments of me, by the way. Thank you for that. And there was a comment about the processing time YouTube has. I'm posting, if we go over 2 hours, I ended up posting lately. What I've been doing is posting the overflow on the backup channel, so you don't have to wait the 24 hours if you absolutely want to see the first part. So I will do that again. D. Warbuck said, wow, Spencer's really slumming it with you guys. He has, that's funny. He has great insight if you ask the right questions. Don't let the opportunity slide. Well, look, I think we've had a pretty good conversation so far. Mel Gibson 138 again says, Spencer, what is your opinion on the current state of Baked Alaska? And that has been a focus of the channel, I'm not gonna lie, over the last few weeks.
Okay,
does he still have a place here, or is he done? That was his comment.
Okay. I don't really like this just tearing people to pieces. I kind of vaguely followed that controversy with Baked Alaska, but
I mean, we had fun with it. Let's be honest. I'm not gonna sit here and
right.
play.
But is this kind of stuff the best thing that we should be doing? Now, I've got to know Baked Alaska for a while. I like him. I heard there's a producer who is pushing him in a weird direction and whatever.
Yeah.
Look, just give people time. I mean, it's just I'm certainly not going to denounce him, and he's always treated me in a friendly fashion. Never done anything that I felt was unfair or disrespectful. And he's Baked Alaska. He's a fun guy. I mean, maybe he did go down the wrong direction, but just give him.
Look, yeah, and I mean, I'll
be the
first
he'll
one
be
to
back.
admit, we've went at him, very hard on this channel. It's pretty much, one of the reasons the channel blew up. So
yeah,
I won't conceal that fact. But I mean, everybody's entitled to a second act, a third act, a fourth act. I mean, look at me, all the shit I've been through, in private and in public. So. If he would like to come on this channel, I'll just put that out here. I would be more than welcome to have him and to have a discussion about everything that has went on. So I don't know if he'll hear this, but if he does, that'll be good. Ian Murphy again in the super chat said, trolling greater than bad optics. Richard is already toxic to the normies. Great way to bring more people to the movement is to post the dankest memes. What do you think about that argument? The dankest memes will always.
I think the dankest memes hit a cement ceiling. The idea that these people think I don't appeal to the American public, or I don't appeal to the right people as well. Look, trolling is fine. It hit a cement ceiling a long time ago. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, there's only so far you can go with it. I mean,
the other thing is, and it's gone that far. I've never denounced trolling. It's just if you don't recognize that problem. The other thing is that we need to reach the right people. Like, we're not going to red pill the entire public. That's not how that's not how the history of ideas and social change occurs. You appeal to the right people. You appeal to elites who have a chance to change power. This idea that this gets back to this just total stupidity of like, we're going to be Americanist or something. America.
Magic soil theory.
So,
yes.
Yeah, you want to appeal to like people who are deluded. Okay, good luck. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is not the history of social change. And we need to appeal to the right people. And so I think we should actually be more vanguardish and more exciting. Just again, you hear this. I see that like we anonymous trolls are going to win over America, and Spencer is toxic. I mean, if you think that, it's just.
Well, look,
I don't even know what to. There's no help for you.
The reason I like you is because
living in such a world of delusion.
I'll just say this. I mean, some people actually went at me on Twitter like, "Wow, you're having Richard Spencer on. You know what the fuck?" Of course, I've liked you for a while. I mean, I just like you because you're thought provoking. Doesn't mean I agree with every single thing you've ever said. I don't.
Ditto for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's not an insult. I'm just being honest. But I like thought provoking people. I like people who are interesting. A lot of the stuff. A matter of fact, one of the columns you wrote, I guess it was a year or two ago now, and it was about national healthcare. Basically, you came out in favor of a national healthcare system in the United States on altright.com, and you caught some shit for that. But I was just like, I mean, that's actually my position too. So I was like, wow.
I'm always catching.
I was really impressed that you stepped out there with that, and there were a lot of people giving you hell over that, and I was like, wow.
And it did change. I think someone had to say it. That idea, I was willing to voice it. Again, if you're not catching flack, you're not over the target. I mean, you have. I don't know. I have always been willing. I opposed Brexit. I've done a lot of things that this idea again that like, he's always counter signaling. He's always so bad. This is not new. If I'm not getting that flack, I don't think I'm actually doing my job.
I remember reading that and I was like, oh wow, okay, well that's me to a T, and I don't even go. I mean, that's my view, and I'll say it if anybody asks me, but I don't necessarily put it out there because I know it's unpopular. And I read your article and I was like, wow, that is exactly my feeling, to a T. And you're talking about all the money we waste on this or that, and how popular a system like that would be. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much my exact view. Okay, let's try to bring in a couple people. I don't want to keep you too long, but I do want to live up to the title of the stream. Let's try to bring in a couple people. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
All right. Okay. Let's try to do that. If I can drag him on. HH, you're on the air live with Richard Spencer on the Kill Stream.
Hey, Richard. I just wanted to ask you about the ethno-state.
Sure.
What do you think if we did separate a state? Do you not deny that would cause a second American Civil War?
I mean, I would say that my concept of the ethno-state, is post-American. So it would probably follow the breakdown of the current order, or undoubtedly it would. The term ethno-state actually is a bit ambiguous, and this is, I'm to blame for that, and to a degree, I need to. I have talked about this. I've talked about it in a lot of podcasts. I've talked about it in speeches, but I need to lay it out in an academic way, actually. But there are ethno-states now. I mean, Poland can be thought of as an ethno-state in terms of linguistically and religiously and ethnically. Although there are some multiple European ethnicities there, it's pretty coherent. And so on. So these ethnostates exist, Norway, and so on, ethnostate. My ideal of an ethnostate is, if it's big. I mean, it is a grand idea for the future. It is not something that's going to be implemented tomorrow. And it would be a large space, perhaps on a continental scale, that would basically be a home for all Europeans, from Germans to Celts to Slavs to Anglo-Saxons to Mediterraneans, etc. And it would be bigger than mere ethno-nationalism. I mean, I am not really an ethno-nationalist. It would be bigger than that because it would have a unified foreign policy. So it would exist on a geopolitical level and would prevent internecine disputes within our race. So this is the concept. It is a big concept. It's futuristic. You can criticize it for, this is like leftists talking about communism or whatever. Sure. But I think the left has actually benefited from having these big goals for the future. We can have smaller goals and we can talk about politics on a smaller level. But I think what the right has always actually lacked is that, forward looking, impulse.
Yeah, and it's not even the left. Just look at nation states like China. I mean, they don't think in terms of year, 2 years. They think in terms of 25 years, 50 years, 100 years, and
exactly.
And that's how you should think.
I
don't know what to say. Like that's
India,
one of the
China,
reasons we've been so fucked. Yeah, exactly.
Most those developing countries, they don't think in the now because they have to progress for the future.
Yeah, well, they're playing the long game. And,
we think in the now.
Yeah.
I mean, look at least not. Maybe you could say they're elite within their power elites within the empire that don't think in the now. They think in terms of decades. But in politics for them is just a circus. But if we focus too much on politics, like we are just stuck in the now. I mean, as we were talking about, the presidential election is going to get started next February, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're just focused on election, and just all these small issues and things like that. I don't know. I think there's something to be said for just unplugging from a lot of this stuff, because we're not going to win by getting just some Republican elected this year or something. What we ultimately need to change the course of history is just so much bigger and so much further out.
You need a third
and
party
there's something to be said.
Break the system, right? Like it's not even about Republican or Democrat. For me, at least, I don't have any respect for either organized political party. I mean, I'll just be honest with you. I think they're both bankrupt. I don't think either are likely to provide the solutions and the fixes that we need for this country. I mean, it's just red versus blue. You know what I mean? Like it's a sporting event at this point. I mean, that's my personal view. So.
No, that's how it works out. It literally works out that way because you can bank on these many voters for one side, this many voters for the other side.
Yeah. I mean, that's my.
They want. View. It's kind of weird in democracy, so we know that they're focused on that 951. It's as if that's democratic. And it's funny because whenever you have an election, like Putin, wins by landslides, it's inherently non-democratic. Really? Why? Why is it inherently fraudulent? Because he's wildly popular.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's like they want this endless game of 51-49. And so no one wins, and it's just polarized and so on. This is what the elite want us focusing on.
All right. So and let me try to drag.
While you drag, Tony, I have a question. In the midterms, what would be more advantageous for you for the movement? If Democrats take control of the House and the Senate, or if Republicans keep it?
Well, yeah. I mean, as tell jaundiced take on the Republican Party. I could go either way. I mean, the idea. Republicans in a Trump victory in 2020, I think we would still be wading through all this shit that we're wading through now. But we would at least not there wouldn't be a Department of Justice investigation of the alt-right or something. I mean, if the Democrats have Congress and they get rid of Trump or what have you, and they they have a president in 2021, things are going to get really hard for us really quickly. And I think there's going to be revenge against anyone associated with this Trumpian nationalism. I think it's going to get very difficult. Hate speech laws, arrest. I don't want to sound like Alex Jones here, but I do think that could very well happen. So, in that sense, now I've said this before in a speech. It's called Beyond Conservatism. What I said was that it doesn't matter so much what happens. It's how we respond. So, I could kind of see it both ways. I mean, I could analyze things. I think the Republicans are going to lose the House, and they might lose the Senate, although that's unlikely, but I think they will lose the House. But again, it's all about how we react to it. And so it's like, if we react to a Republican victory and be like, we've won, there's no much more to do, Trump's our guy, whatever, that's wrong. No, we have to continue to do politics. We have to continue to be critical. If we react to the GOP, say, losing the House and being like, oh, the sky's falling, we've lost, we might as well just give up and enter the, Globo Gayplex and or kill ourselves or, whatever. If that's how you react to it, then you're just as wrong. Basically, we should react in the same way. We have to work harder. We have to be more powerful in our articulation of our ideas. So it's about how we react to it, and not so much what happens. And I don't always like playing those games of like escalationism or accelerationism of like we want the GOP to lose so that everyone will lose hope, and then we'll. I mean,
that's a fool's gambit, to be honest with you.
I agree. I agree. It's a fool's gambit. We've got to play the board as it happens. Like when you play someone with chess. We're not computers. We haven't memorized games. It's every game is a little bit different, and it's about reacting to history, and so that's how we should face it. I mean, we need ideals and we need goals, but in terms of the day-to-day stuff, I mean, I'm not going to go take a cyanide capsule because the GOP lost. You're like, oh, gosh darn.
Take that ultimate black pill.
Ted Cruz is no longer a senator. Oh, my God. What am I going to do? No. I'm going to continue to live my life and do my stuff.
Let me bring somebody else. I know you've already stayed passionately, by the way. I'll thank you. Let me bring a couple people in, then we'll get you off. I wanted to ask you one question before we do get you off, but let's get a couple calls. Are you cool with that? Are you still here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, he's still here.
All right. Let me bring a couple. Let's try the old order. He said his mic works now. You're on the air live.
Hey, how you guys going?
We're doing good, man. Go ahead and get your point, and no disrespect, but I'm going to pull you out. Right
question for Richard. I still cannot hear you guys, and I do not know why. A question for Richard. That is for, you were talking about Nick Fuentes on JF's channel about different systems of government within sort of the ethno-state question. I was curious if you could elaborate a little bit more on the questions of, say, like a monarchist society, or even going back, say, to the times of the Romans or the Greeks or something like that. You can kick me out now because I still can't hear anything anyone's saying.
Did you hear what he said, Richard?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, what is vitally important is that people like myself are in charge, and exactly what form the government would take is kind of, I don't know. It's of secondary importance. I mean, I don't believe in democracy on two levels, in the sense of I don't believe in the ideal of democracy. I don't. At least electoral representative democracy. I don't believe that because someone gets 51%, they therefore express the will of the people, or they therefore are more, intelligent or insightful than the rest of us, or long-term thinking. I don't believe in those ideals at all. But I also don't believe that we actually live in a democracy. I mean, there are, if we actually had a referendum on immigration, I mean, the elite will never allow that to happen. They will never allow that kind of direct democracy. And in terms of the real power elite that affect foreign policy, monetary policy, and things like that, again, that is not going to change because we elected, Beto as opposed to Ted Cruz, or even Trump as opposed to Hillary. And so I don't, the importance is really establishing elite dominance over a society, and it's the actual form it takes is, of secondary importance. But I do believe that something is sovereign, and therefore there almost is a kind of monarchic principle to politics. And I don't mean that literally. I don't think we need to revive an old family or things like that. But what I mean is there ultimately is one entity that is sovereign that ultimately decides. And so, in that sense, I don't think democracy as we think of it now is this, as a free for all. We just, elect our representatives and they do the will of the people. We have these endless conversations together, whatever. I don't believe in any of that nonsense.
All right, let's try this guy. I think he said last night that he was a leftist. So let's see if he has a challenging question. So far, by the way, everybody's been very well behaved. I thank you.
Yes.
C. Thomas, you're muted right now. Oh, he jumped out. Wow.
He was afraid.
Maybe so. I don't know. That's happened a couple times. Rawhide, you're on the air. By the way, if you're in the green room, please, Lord, be ready to come on. I know it takes a minute sometimes, but if I pull you in and you're not ready, the only thing I'm gonna do is pull you out because it's live. It's not live television, but it's that same concept. Rhyme or Reason, you're on the air. Oh God, pathetic. Rock, you're on the air. I can hear you, man.
How do I eject it?
Someone is trying to put us on live on the internet.
You're live right now, dude.
Take me next. I gotta connect with a different device, bro.
Oh man, fail. Okay.
Why do you have to connect it? You're already on.
Why are you in the green room if you're not ready? I hate to rag on people, but if you're there and you're not ready, I understand it takes a while sometimes, but look, nonpartisan media.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Give us a take quickly. Thank you.
Sure. I have a question for Richard. With the future of alt media, do you think that Bitcoin will play a part? And is that the future that we should be going in to fund our alt media?
Yeah, no question. If it's not Bitcoin itself, definitely blockchain and cryptocurrency. It's exploded, but it's not ultimately mainstream at the moment. Also, there was a misconception. When Bitcoin was at its peak, I actually called the crash of Bitcoin, but I didn't. As I made clear in that video, I don't not believe in cryptocurrency or anything. I do believe in it. I felt like I was just watching like a tech bubble in miniature with Bitcoin, where
when it was at 19,000, what can you say?
Exactly.
Yeah.
When douchebags I was at a hotel bar. These just really kind of just douchey people talking about Bitcoin. Everyone must own Bitcoin, and it was I was just brought back to the tech Silicon Valley bubble, the early 2000s and or late 90s and housing bubble. I heard all that stuff before, and I was like, all right, this is crashing. And I was right.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
but I don't. It's not like I don't believe in it. I actually believe in it, and I think we're going to have to do this because the banking sector does not like us. I have had trouble with banks in the recent past that well before Charlottesville. Things like PayPal and Stripe are just actively hostile. So we are this is gonna be hard, and I think we ultimately have to go there. I was talking with someone, and he said this, and he was like, again, I thought this statement was a bit unfair, but I'll go with it because it proves the point. It's like, who's done more for the alt-right, like Richard Spencer or the guys who developed Bitcoin, and he had a huge point. Obviously, Bitcoin's the answer to that because it's like, at some point we won't be able to exist, and I think this might happen sooner than later. At some point, we won't be able to exist without alternatives to the mainstream platforms, and so we need to get on this fast. And there's no question that the people really developing this kind of stuff are arguably more important than any leader or thought leader. more essential, you could say.
Let's do one more caller, and then I'll ask you the question I was going to ask, and then you can.
Sure, and then I can take off.
Yeah, then you can go home. Well, I mean, figuratively go home. Yes. All right, let's try. Bibble, you're on the air live.
Yes, sir.
On the Kill Stream.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say, every young culture wants to rebel against societal norms, and with society and the media being far left radical ideology, how do you think that will help your movement? And do you have a time frame that you think it might help your movement if it does?
You're absolutely right, and this is another reason why we should not present ourselves as like a implicitly white Americanist vanguard, which makes zero sense. But yes, because we want to reach the right people. We want to touch the youth and so on. We don't want to touch Fox News. I mean, that is an average viewing age of 72 or something. Like we want to get to the people who are going to experience this, who are going to be in the movement for 30, 40, 50 years. We want to reach them now. And we want to differentiate ourselves by being clearer and being more radical and so on than the rest. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on with Gen Z, which is amazing. I mean, we don't really know what they're going to be like next. But again, like just even Nick Fuentes, I mean, that was an interesting conversation between Nick and me, because Nick and I, you could say, we're almost like on two different poles, but we strove to find like what we have in common. And so it was a really fantastic conversation, I thought. And I think Nick does as well. And if Nick is a Gen Z conservative, I mean, that is a really refreshing, inspiring sight to see. And so, yeah, I think moving there, the millennials are kind of ambiguous. The Gen Xers, if I could speak up for my generation, we are a very cynical kind of black-pilled group of people, and that can sometimes lead to interesting insights. The millennials, I think there's some interesting like demographics on millennials where, white millennials are getting more pro-Trump than they were, even in 2016. This is remarkable. But the general tendency of millennials is towards, awful, silliness, just, SJW, just gross, all that kind of stuff. But I do think that if we can separate off like the good ones, there's a lot of good stuff in millennials and Gen Z. They're being birthed in this crucible of this just horrifying place. I mean, when I went through college orientation, in the late 90s and early 2000s, that kind of stuff. I know all this stuff. Nothing that is happening right now is new. But what is happening now, like the idea that transgenderism would be promoted among 8-year-olds, that is
insanity.
It's like I was living in Christendom, like in the 80s and 90s. Like we were all like devoted, Catholics and knights and ladies in waiting, and we were practicing chivalry, and like it makes my childhood, which wasn't like that. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, like it was pretty debauched as it was. It makes it seem like that in comparison.
Quaint,
I mean, the kind of just sickness that's going on, and I think sadly people will either become sick because they're exposed to all these horrible viruses, or they'll reject it and become heroes.
All right, we have a first off, I had one question I wanted to ask, but there was a quick question that chat was like bugging me to ask, which is off the wall. We actually had a guy on the other night who was an anti-circumcision activist.
Yeah, on Monday. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just be real quick. I have promised someone on Twitter. I actually also agree that we should be anti-circumcision.
I mean, I do too,
and
to be honest with you. Yeah.
I promised people that I was going to write an article. I just haven't delivered, but
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right.
This is probably literally the same guy who's been
Yeah, it
bothering
is.
me.
I think it is.
It probably
Gregory
is.
Malchuk. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's
Gregory
the same dude.
He's right to
Thorsten
bother
Malchuk.
me. I haven't done what I've promised.
All right, I saw chat bugging me. They didn't actually think I would ask you about it, so mission accomplished. The other question. I mean, look, we could talk to you for 3 or 4 hours, and I still wouldn't
easily
even get done with the things that I wanted to ask. Like I literally have a whole list of things here that we didn't get to. But I guess during your debate or blood sports, whatever you want to call it, with Nick Fuentes, you talked about Alexander Dugin and the fourth political theory. How would you describe that to this audience? I mean, I'm a political science major and stuff. I know a fair amount about it, but how would you describe that to people who know nothing about it? And why would it be important for them to read Dugin and the fourth political theory?
Well, the fourth political theory is basically about the 20th century, and you can go back a little bit further, but it's about that century. So there were 3 great ideologies, and the oldest is that transformed European society and fully brought it out of the age of Christendom, and you could say and it brought about the modern world. The oldest of these ideologies is liberalism. And I don't think I really need to go into that, but basically the individual is the center of history. The individual is the center of how we think about politics and society and rights and so on. There was you could say a development out of that to a large degree, but also something new of communism, Marxism, etc. And this move towards a materialist, egalitarian society, but also a highly individualistic society. I mean, if you think about Marx's own theory, it was about being a fisherman in the morning and a poet in the afternoon and whatever. It was this, you ending the division of labor would inspire this new individualism. But anyway, there was a kind of synthetic reaction to both communism and liberalism, which was fascism. And it was an attempt to take aspects of communism, the marshalling of society, a certain degree of collectivization or socialism, you could say, but bring in, it's almost like the Chinese say capitalism with Chinese characteristics, or communism or capitalism with Chinese characteristics. It is almost like socialism with national characteristics. So it would be ethnic, it would be racial, it would bring in a kind of futurist, or you could even say Nietzschean, or in the case of fascism, Roman, like dynamism. The Autobahn is an expression, just this hyper modern way of doing things, this driving a car at high speeds, but you would be part of the natural world, and it would be beautiful at the same time. This bringing about of radical democracy. Mussolini and Hitler were democrats in a essential sense. They were in essential sense, not in a technical sense, but in essential sense, they spoke for the people. They were reviving the nation and so on. But then to do that by evoking, Roman hierarchy and so on. I mean, it was a synthetic move. And basically, the youngest ideology died first. Fascism, communism lasted before it kind of died of old age. And liberalism is still here, the first ideology. So Dugin is talking about a fourth political theory, which is this new beginning. And he means that in a Heideggerian sense, this kind of like clearing of the slate. We're going to start the world all over again. And I have actually evoked this in a number of my speeches, but the fourth political theory is yet to be defined. And, at least how I'm defining it, hopefully is the identity is going to become, as class was for the left, identity will be for the new right.
He talks about the eschatological meaning and stuff. Of course, I was a student, political science student. And I remember one of the things one of my teachers told me: if you ever want to sound intelligent, memorize this phrase, and it was the immanentization of the eschaton.
Yes,
the end of history, so to speak. And I know I'm keeping you, but. Could you explain what that means to people? Like, I read a review of his theory, and I've read,
That was a conservative movement quote.
Yeah, exactly.
What was that? Fuggelin.
Yes.
Vogelin is the person who said that. It's basically heaven on earth is the way that I would describe that for normies. And so, yes, communism would bring about the end of history. Now, I think Americanism, because America is a kind of communist society, it also wants to bring about that end of history, the end of the world, where there's nothing beyond consumerist democracy and new lifestyle choices.
The final stage, the final progression of humanity, basically, is what it is. Right?
Exactly, and heaven forbid that's actually the case. So a lot of conservatives would kind of balk at this, and it was their it was kind of interesting. It was their critique of communism that it was forcing history to end and so on, and it ended in bloodshed, and a legitimate critique to say the least. But they miss their own heaven on earth of America, and the fact that liberalism itself shared those exact characteristics with communism. But that being said, I don't know. I think there's almost all of this kind of conservative, criticism almost makes me want to defend heaven on earth from a Hegelian standpoint. The idea is to bring spirituality into the concrete world, so that politics is a making manifest of idealism.
And the whole end of history thing stems from Hegel. Like that's where it comes from.
Oh yeah, no question. But there's something to that. Like the ethno-state is such an ideal. I mean, it is to create an ideal state, and so I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of torn. I think our politics, we need to have that will to bring something into the world. We need to have that same passion that Bolsheviks had, that they were willing to change the course of history. They weren't fuddy-duddy conservatives who were, one shouldn't do that because it always ends bad. We should just be detached and so on. I don't agree with that. I think we need to strive to become historical actors and not just analyze the world, but change it.
All right, one more point, and I swear this is the last one. Somebody actually gave me $10, and then they gave me another $2 because they said, "Ralph, why didn't you ask this?" I literally did not see it. It's a little I don't know if it's
I'll be quick.
Edge or what? Yeah, be quick, and then we'll get you out of here. By the way, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, we literally could talk to you for 3 or 4 hours and still not even hardly get to the tip of the iceberg here.
Oh, I could listen to the sound of my voice for hours. I mean, that's my favorite thing to do.
All right, Shaolin Stacker said, Richard, been with my amazing wife for 10 years before I learned about any of these ideas. She's a member of the tribe. I believe he means she's Jewish. How do you reconcile that? How do you reconcile with it in your situation? Do you see any contradiction? That was his question. I guess he didn't think I would read it.
Well,
I read it.
That's that's a very personal question. I won't. I couldn't give him any advice. I mean, in the sense of I don't know the situation.
Right.
Tragic, and I definitely have sympathy. I mean, I think you have to be true to yourself and so on. And oh gosh, I just can't answer such a painful question. And I don't want to tell any one individual how to live their life based on ideology.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a personal question. He basically dared me to read it out. So
well, the fact that he's willing, and again, maybe this was just some take it. The fact that he's willing to talk about that, means that he's a very serious person, and so I mean he should be applauded for that.
All right, fair enough. Mr. Richard Spencer, thank you so much for coming on, man. I hope you'll come back because
I will. Yeah, this was great.
I've always respected you. I know, like you said, me and you don't agree on everything, but I really respect you because you're an intelligent person. I'm more intelligent than myself, and I don't feel any shame in saying that. I love to speak to people who are more intelligent than me. Like I enjoy that, and I think that. Just your presence on the public space, to use JF Garapi's term, is a net benefit to everyone, and I don't say that lightly. So, thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate those comments, and right back.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, man.
the good work you're doing, and yeah, I would love to come back.
Oh, thank
Sweet.
you, man. All right, well, you have
That's
a good
awesome.
weekend, sir.
All right, talk to you guys later.
All right, you
Later,
too.
thanks.